Dr. Marjorie Jobson's National Director of Khulumani Support Group, and she joins us now for a little bit more on this particular story and issues surrounding it. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter.
So the release of Janusz Waluś, the pending release, has caused quite a lot of pain, and people have been venting it. And I suppose the work that you do speaks a lot to what happened during the apartheid era and how people are still suffering the pain of those issues, those things, when it comes to getting some closure and justice.
Very much, Peter. I think the issue with Janusz Waluś is that one of the most precious lives that we have, of whom, Chris Hani, of whom we had such huge expectations, was taken by someone who came from Poland originally, although he got dual citizenship, Polish and South African. And I think the pain is even deeper, because when I think of the people that I have come to know through meetings in Kgoshi-Mampuru, where Janusz Waluś still is incarcerated, somehow, as South Africans, we have ways of coming to terms with the fact that South Africans did these terrible things to each other. But I think the pain when it is somebody driven by anti-communist rhetoric and ideology, and he's not South African, it's made it much, much more difficult to extend sort of some kind of empathy to him. And I think the issue is that he was an instrument. He answered an advertisement for a very highly paid job. There were apparently many other applicants for this job that was asked for, and he was chosen. And I think the people who chose him, Clive Derby-Lewis amongst the people, one of the main people who chose Waluś to commit this terrible, terrible crime, chose him specifically because he was not a South African by birth, and he had little affiliation with the struggle of the people in this country, and I think that's where a lot of the pain is trapped in people, and we can't grieve in the way we've been able to grieve for lives taken by people like de Kock and Barnard, other people who committed basically almost 200 murders each. But we struggle with this one man who came from a foreign country to come and take away this person in whom we really believed we had a very safe future. He stood for fighting inequality in particular. And I think it's so interesting that the Constitutional Court has put the principle of equality before the law as one of the main deciding factors. So, administrative justice means justice has to be served equally, no matter who the person is. It's just that we struggle with the response of the Constitutional Court to see this justice extend to somebody like Waluś Janusz. And I know for Khulumani, we had opportunities to meet these killers in prison. We had dialogues with them. I'm not aware of there being any similar opportunities for people to assess for themselves and listen to this man speak, unless they were in the the hearings, TRC hearings, when he applied for reprieve. So I think that's what we have a hard way of assessing what took him on this journey to a place where he could kill such an incredibly wonderful human being. That's always, when we've had these encounters with the perpetrators, that has been the foremost question. What brought you to do this killing? What was it that drove you to take up a mission to kill somebody? And we get answers from like the Ferdy Barnards and people like that, but we've heard nothing like that from Janusz Waluś. So I think that's a big part of the struggle that people have. And I just feel that Chris Hani, with his supreme sort of belief in the value of human life, he would not want lives to be hampered now with the burden of holding hatred I don't think he was a person filled with hatred himself. So it's very, very painful to see the hatred that people are struggling to deal with even today.
All right, so I mean, the law is a difficult area, and the judges, the Constitutional Court, they didn't write the law, and they just have to interpret it. So that's the challenge they face. But help us understand what could have happened, perhaps beyond the courts, to help people with the healing. I suspect things like confession, contrition, and full disclosure go a long way to getting that healing that is desperately sought.
So I found it very interesting. Marion Tam explained this week that actually he has told everything that he knew. You know, we've wanted to believe there was a conspiracy, that we could find a scapegoat who put him up to it. But in fact, he was a person who responded to an advertisement in the newspaper, you know, and was chosen as the most suitable person to commit this assassination. I think that's the horror of it. And we also do not hear anything. I think the problem with his situation is you don't get to speak to him unless, I mean, Khulumani has never asked if we could meet and talk to him. And we were invited, for instance, by Eugene de Cook many times to come and meet him. And he said he was prepared to tell us everything he knew about the cases we came to discuss with him. And people felt at the end, we are hearing for ourselves the real truth from this man. We haven't had those opportunities with Walus. You know, we have no sense of the human being that he is. All we can do is like administer an equal justice, you know, apply the law as it affords him the opportunity to be put on.
From your experience,
so those are the struggles. We don't know this human being.
Yeah. From your experience, how important is it for the victims, the families of people that have been killed, to have this engagement that you're talking about and to hear and understand?
Peter, I think it is incredibly important. I don't know if Dimple and Lindy have actually had that opportunity. I'm not familiar with what happened in their situation. But it is remarkable what the meeting of humans and this person who's actually been in jail now for something like, I mean, it's way beyond what he was expected to be in jail. And of course, he was sentenced to death, but he escaped the death penalty because of the application of our new constitution that ruled on the primacy of the right to life. You know, so he's been a beneficiary of many, many things, not only this latest constitutional court judgment, but he was in line to be hanged like all the other people who were sentenced to death. So I think, you know, the universe has been very generous to him, and I hope that he has a spirit of generosity, but it's very, very hard to understand. Many of the people who did terrible deeds, you know, murders, left Koshi Mampuru saying, I am going to give back because of what I did. We don't hear those kinds of feelings expressed by this man Balus. That's critical, you know.
Yeah.
All we see is a picture of the man, and we hear the judgments of the courts, but we don't know this human being.
Yeah.
And how has he been shaped by his experiences in correctional facilities? Because what interests me is I've worked with some of these murderers who were such trouble in the correctional facilities that one of them I know was moved 11 times in 4 years. What I read of Janus Vanush is he has been very compliant with all the regulations in the correctional facilities. But it doesn't tell me more than that, about this human being. What was the background that shaped him to become so fiercely anti-communist that he would even go out and murder a Chris Hani without even knowing the man? I mean, what amazes me is about somebody like Ferdy Barnard is that after he killed David Webster, who was very, very closely associated with Khulumani, he went home and looked at the news and he heard about the person that was David Webster that he had just murdered, and he couldn't live with himself after that because he felt such grief that he had carried out an assassination and he had never known what the quality of the person he had killed. So these are all the things that I think we're struggling with.
Dr. Jobson, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very, very much indeed for giving us another side to these very difficult stories. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure.
All right, that's Dr. Marjorie Jobson, who's National Director of the Khulumani Support Group.